Welcome to the High Performance Hockey Podcast. Today's question comes from Cole. Regarding your Gain, Go, Grow model, do you use any triphasic training within that model? For example, isos on your gain day, concentrics on your go day, and eccentrics on your grow day? The short answer to that question, Cole, is no. We use various methods based on the theme of the day. Some of those would be isometrics. I'll give you a perfect example. We might use overcoming isometrics both on our gain day and our go day for the same reason, post-activation potentiation. So we don't have a strict day where it's concentric only focus or isometric only focus. Having said that, Cal's work was massively instrumental for me, specifically years back when I read the first triphasic book on the understanding and the importance of both the isometric and eccentric components. I think a lot of times, and I'll point my thumb, I was focused on the concentric only. So it certainly opened my eyes. Both books are, in my opinion, must-reads for strength and conditioning coaches. Hope that helps, Cole, and thanks for listening to the podcast. Our guest today, Director of Hockey Performance for Michigan State University, Will Morlock. It was a great conversation with Will. He joined Michigan State athletic performance staff in the summer of 2022, and his primary duties are training the hockey program. In addition to his work with the team in the weight room, he works closely with the athletic training department, nutrition, and hockey analytics departments, respectively. Using applied sports science, he works to maximize available technology within the goal of developing each student athlete. Will has instituted high-level individualized and team training programs for the Spartan hockey players that have allowed them to continue to grow throughout the season and reach their potential. His programming has frequently been credited by the players for their level of success as they acknowledge their fitness and preparedness for the grind of Big Ten hockey. In addition, former Spartan players are returning to East Lansing for his guidance in the summers as they prepare for their professional hockey seasons. Will was most recently the Director of Performance at GVN Performance in Plymouth, Michigan, and concurrently served as the head strength and conditioning coach for the U.S. national team programs under 18 and 17 national teams, with additional involvement supporting the gold medal winning 2021 World Junior team. In his role with GVN, he led a comprehensive off-season program for the NHL, American Hockey League, and Collegiate and youth hockey players. Really, really interesting conversation. Will's a really sharp guy. I think I was the most interested in his experience creating culture at Michigan State, building what he called an applied sports science setting. I like how he was led. That was, obviously people first, but then, really focusing on what's the adaptation that I'm trying to go after. And then from there, we can use the technology and the methods, et cetera. But you really wanted to focus on understanding the physiology and obviously the people first. Really interesting and really in depth. I was really impressed with his explanation of the microcycles and how he develops Michigan State's microcycles throughout the course of the in-season. So really interesting podcast. I hope everyone enjoys the listen. Welcome in. Welcome to the podcast, Will. Thanks so much for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I've been a listener, so I'm excited to be here and hopefully share something.
Absolutely. Pumped to have you. I try to ask every guest, Will, who are some people that you would strongly recommend speaking to? And Rob Dombrowski, Sacred Heart, had said, yeah, Will's the man. So I'm excited to learn from you, excited to spread a positive message here regarding the sports of hockey, and then obviously our passion points, which are all things performance in hockey. So let's start with this. For a listener that might not know your background, you're at Michigan State right now. Talk to me about your current appointment, what you do, what you overlook at Michigan State.
Yeah, so I'm kind of everything under that umbrella of performance from an off-ice standpoint, strength conditioning, sports science. I'm really fortunate. I came over with Coach Nightingale his first year here. I was with him at the NTDP for both his years. And, I've got a great relationship with him, and he really values my role and, allows me, and he even seeks my input at times. And it makes my job really fun, right? I feel like I can maximize hopefully what I can do here and provide some sort of an advantage for our guys. So really everything from an off-ice standpoint here, I'm fortunate again, my only team's hockey. So I'm kind of able to leave no stone unturned and pour everything I have into our guys, which was a dream of mine coming from where I was at before, to really dive deep with one group. So kind of give everything I have with these guys we got here and try to do that.
Outstanding. What an awesome thing to be able to do as well as focus on the one sport, right? Which is a rarity probably in a lot of college settings, with the exception of
Big time.
football. The other thing, I'm aging myself now. Your coach Nightingale actually played against at Michigan State. I was at Miami of Ohio back in those days.
Okay.
I think Will, I had hair in those days, but that was a long while ago, man. Small world. Talk to me about, I'm reading your bio, and I'll talked about fusing and working with athletic training, nutrition, hockey analytics. Had the opportunity to do some research as well before you and I got on the phone, looking underneath the hood at Michigan State, how beautiful the resources are and how close in proximity everything is to other professionals from athletic training, nutrition, etc. I know it's a sexy word now in all of performance to say applied sports science. In your words, what is applied sports science?
Yeah, I think that's a big umbrella, and I'm sure there's lots of answers to that. I think for me, it's having structure with how you make sense of your data. I think it's collecting things with purpose. It's putting things into action. And I think data is ultimately an outcome. It's how you use that to kind of adjust your process. I think it's more important than data is having a really good understanding of adaptation, and then how you can use data to leverage that, right? Reinforce maybe your bias or challenge it at times. And again, here we've got myself, we've got athletic training, nutrition, player development, our coaching staff, and to really bring that all together and put that into play with ultimately them applying it with the way we practice, the way we fuel, the way we prepare. I think that's applied sports science. It doesn't just exist in the gym, but it kind of marries all those things together.
Yeah, great answer, Will. I know you came over from the private sector. You started at Michigan State in 2022, right? Obviously, You were brought over with Coach Nightingale, and that probably helped in a certain way of creating an buy-in, for lack of a better word, day one. How did you create your culture at Michigan State in the weight room regarding performance and fusing that obviously with working in the sport of hockey?
Yeah, I had no college experience and probably not enough experience just in general. When I got this job, I'm really grateful for Nighty seeing something in me, and I leaned on some people that I talked to in the past. I called Matt Shaw at Denver. I called Brajesh at Quinnipiac, and then
man, those are two former guests, Big Will. Those are two former guests, man. Good guys too, eh?
Big time. Yeah. And then a third one for you. I called Paul Valukas at Wisconsin. So
there's a man right there.
All your guys. But and it's kind of funny looking back on it. I called Matt and Brajesh in particular. I'd heard and I kind of knew from sharing players with them before that those are the gold standard, right? And then Brajesh's team won the year after I called, and Matt won the last. I don't think it's a coincidence. I really do think in college we can have an impact, and hopefully sounds like I'm cheating off the right guys at least. But I talked to those guys and I talked to Paul, and it wasn't about training. It was exactly about that. It was about culture in college, and the demands of not just the athlete but the student. And Paul gave me great advice to call the guys. I was coming in, being at NTDP and working in the private sector. There were a ton of college teams that had players who went on to play there. And this was actually one where I didn't really know anybody. So I was coming in cold, and I made those phone calls. Some guys it was 2-3 minutes, some guys it was 10-20 minutes, but I called every guy before I got here and didn't, talk about training, but just try to talk about life and how they're spending their summer and get to know them. And, I thought coming in, that was probably priority number one, was having a relationship with the guys. I spend so much time with these guys, right or wrong. We don't play a ton of games in college hockey. They get a ton of time in the gym. And I knew, not just from me, but from our coaching staff, what we were going to ask them was going to be incredibly hard. We were coming into a team who I think might have lost their last 12 games of the year before, and we were trying to make a big change and do it quick. So to ask that of them, I thought it was important that the gym and training was somewhere that guys wanted to be. I didn't want guys dragging their feet. I was going to push them and ask a ton of them, but I wanted it to be something that they understood why we were doing it, and hopefully in a weird way, maybe even have fun with it. So I think the relational piece was huge, and there wasn't a lot of rah and we're going to work hard and do this. I just tried to coach them hard and give them the opportunity to work hard every day and hold them to that. I think the guys will say it hasn't gotten easier by any means, but that first summer was a doozy. And I think we set the tone pretty well. And, hopefully guys have continued to get better from there.
Outstanding. And I love the fact that you called your guys. I know it's cliche. We talk about it all the time, people. And I think that's a really, really important concept. You talked about management versus development. You talked to me about, hey, you don't play a lot of games in college hockey. 34 games in the regular season. you got management, diverse development, and maybe you don't look at it that way. So I'm not putting words in your mouth. Obviously, you're talking a National Hockey League team, that 82 rate game regular season, that's about managing stress, right? You're not going to, not that you can't develop, tough time to develop, right? Do you view that differently in the college game, management versus development? Are we monitoring and maintaining abilities? Are we cranking and trying to hard to improve those abilities? And then to piggyback on that question, without giving you too much to chew on here, what do you deem important? What are your KPIs? Why are they important?
Wins and losses do matter, and we play so few games. I would never want to jeopardize or put guys in a spot where they're not able to be at their best on the weekend. So there absolutely is a management component to it. But I really do think as a staff and as a program, our mindset is very centered around development. We want this to be a place where players can win and have success, but they come to get ready to play, hopefully in the NHL. And if not, realize there's a lot of other ways to be a pro hockey player that exist beyond the NHL. And it's habits, it's hard work, it's developing the body, it's developing the engine, the speed, the capacity, all these qualities that we want our guys to have to play at the next level, and realize that they need to play at the next level. College hockey is hard, but it's not the NHL. So we try to, I think almost you got to make it hard enough to kind of cover that spread. We're not playing 4 games, changing time zones, traveling, all these things through the week. So in college hockey, with our schedule pretty religiously Monday to Friday, Friday, Saturday games, Monday to Thursday, you've got a really good runway to train. And you've got to be smart, right? Guys aren't going to be able to get better if they're hurt and they're banged up. But if you understand, stress, and you have a good insight to not just the on, but the off ice, you can leverage that in a way where you can really train and get better, both stronger and faster. I've seen it enough to know 100% you can get better during the season, but you've got to have a plan and purpose, and it's got to be executed. And I think that's one thing our guys do a good job of, is they come to the rink to get better. It's not coming to the rink to tick off the boxes and, okay, we've got a game on Friday, but we really get to make the most of that runway and hopefully be better at the end of the season when we started it.
What do you deem as your KPIs for your team, if you're able to share those? And are there certain metrics that you want to take a look at throughout the course of the season to maintain, hey, we're getting stronger, we're getting more powerful? How do you track those, and what do you deem important for your players?
It's evolved every year with access to technology, and we're very fortunate with the Big Ten budget. We have the support of our athletic department to, we have 1080s, we have force plates, we do load management, all these different things. So I think first and foremost, I try to work backwards from the ice. So this year we started doing a goal to blue line. So we do a sprint on the ice. Similar to our sprints off the ice, our force plate, we try to get a look at it, weekly as our season allows. It's built into our skills as almost like a speed station. Vicky had given me that idea. It's a little bit more practical to actually incorporate it into things instead of having to ask for standalone ice time. So we can test guys' speed on the ice every week. We do a 10-yard sprint off the ice every week, and then we do a counter movement jump like everybody else on the force plate every week. So I think, from specific to a little bit more general, we're able to look at, to me, what really matters is acceleration and power. If I can make these guys better accelerators, I think our game's won within that, those first 3 to 5 steps, that first 10 yards. So getting the pucks quicker, and winning those battles goes a long way. And if I can make them, improve in that regard and be more powerful in the gym, I think for the most part, I'm doing my job.
Excellent response. Piggybacking off your force plate, just had an interesting conversation. I seem to have a lot of them with the same individual, Mal McHugh. You're a really bright guy. We were talking about all the force plates readings, and oh my gosh, you can get lost in the forest with a lot of this stuff, right? I think there's 73 different metrics. Is there anything that you found through your research, both in the applied and then looking at the research that's existing right now in academia, that you deem important for your jump profiling? Or is it just a jump height that you're looking at? Is it an eccentric? Is it a propulsive component for your players? Are you able to share that?
Yeah. So I think obviously jump height's a good outcome and in a good measure. You're trying to flush that out, but I communicate to our guys, it really is a power test. You don't jump in hockey. I don't care how much you jump necessarily. I've actually got guys who aren't great jumpers, but are relatively powerful. It's just a little bit of that fish out of water there, and they don't need to be able to jump to play their sports. So I'm concerned first and foremost with power, and then knowing that power is made up of force and velocity. Initially, I was drawn to that, but I don't think the jump is a great measure of force production because it's not a strength test. It's more of a your ability to apply force, not necessarily produce force against whatever an isometric test or an isokinetic test might be a better representative of. So I'll pit our isometric testing against our speeds on the jump. And I see that as a good way to kind of, are you strong and slow? Are you fast and weak, or somewhere in the middle of both those things? And then the jump I look at more as almost like a mini change of direction, the braking, the switch phase, and then the propulsive phase. So I look at those impulses and a stiffness, and then where guys have a discrepancy, we'll prescribe plyos and power training based on that. Are you doing a more concentric driven, whatever, maybe a trap bar jump, a seated box jump, or are we doing more stretch shortening cycle, quick switch, transition, plyos, oscillatory training, things like that? So that's probably as deep as I go on the force plate. I 100% agree with you. When I first got this thing, I was a little overwhelmed and excited, and but I think it's easy, even as you hone your metrics in, and you get good at making guys jump higher and more powerful. And as a coach, that feels good and it pumps your tires a little bit. But I think it's also realizing that's not the end goal, And I've noticed looking at guys, I think looking at our correlations between our on ice and our off ice testing, a sprint, a broad jump, and a jump on a force plate are all correlated with the ice. Depending on your population, some maybe more than others, but I think the marriage of all those things, guys who are a Swiss Army knife, who are good up, good out, those guys are good on the ice, right? Yep. So it's kind of how you move. A rising tide raises all ships. How you move all those things up together and not getting hyper focused on one or the other. And that I almost look at the force plate power vertically being more correlated with the gym. Guys who are good in the gym can lift heavy, have some pop on the force plate. I've seen that not necessarily translate to being great horizontally, being great at projection. So I think it's important to separate your power on the force plate from your power on whatever, the 1080 or in a sprint. I think those two need to be looked at differently.
Excellent response. Slight shift, still staying on this idea of some of the measurement and technology pieces. Load monitoring, I know the last 10 years, it's been a sexy term everywhere. How are you making informed decisions with it? And what I mean by that, I ask this of everybody that has load monitoring. Are there any aha moments, Will, that you've had with it that you wouldn't, as a practitioner, knowing the sport, knowing what the guys go through on a daily basis, would say that number is great. It reinforces what I already know. Does that make sense?
The load management stuff, we use a system. It's called Sports Performance Technologies. It's with Dr. Stephen McGregor. I think it really allows me to model and plan and periodize at a really high level. The metrics maybe aren't as granular as Catapult, and I prefer that way, to be honest. I work with both, and I think Catapult does an unbelievable job looking at the day.
Okay.
If I have a volume and an intensity, I'm happy, right? If I can hang my hat on each of those things, knowing that they're not the same, that load can be made of different things, and we can kind of categorize our days based on those two metrics and give a good target. This allows me to really model the week based on, a game down the line, where we want to enter said game from a chronic training load and acute training load, and kind of where the discrepancy between those two is that I feel puts our guys in the best position to have success, and then how we move in that direction, right? So I think I've used it looking at the day, managing load, but also more from a periodization and how we actually model and build our structure with the way we practice.
Excellent. Well, it's going to take me right to a beautiful pivot. Programming. And I'd like to pull the hood up and get some more granularity in your programming, your philosophy, specifically right now during the season. I always come back to, you got a hell of a hockey team right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Second in the country, right behind Boston College. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah, we've hovered around up there a little bit.
So I always say you can't win the Kentucky Derby with a jackass. You got to have the horses, right? You guys got horses. And I mean horses. You know what I mean. Great people, but you got great talent as well, right? How do you maximize the development of the horses, right? And I mean people. And what I mean by that is, number one, what's the overarching philosophy? I think you talked about it before: power output, acceleration, etc. And then what does a weekly schedule look like? You said you played Saturday. You said you played Sunday, right? And then, so you have two lifts during the week. What are those focused on? Is there a theme of that day? What are you trying to get out of those lifts? And I know it kind of might ebbs and flow depending on how the guys feel, if there's injuries, but overarching philosophy. And then what does a microcycle look like for Michigan State University?
Yeah, I think overarching philosophy, I want to support our identity. Our identity of our team is smart, fast, hard. So I need to make sure that I train and prepare guys to play that way. So, we really want to wear teams down. So I think it's being well conditioned, it's being durable, and it's being fast, but it's sustaining speed. Again, with that college schedule, we play consistently Friday, Saturday. So Monday to Thursday, we're in the gym every day. It varies highly based on the week, travel the weekend before. how much we're doing each day, even maybe the goal of that day. But for the most part, I think Monday, our guys are human. On Sundays, we do have a culture where guys do come in and they recover, whether it be something with me, be doing whatever, the pools or things they need to do on Sunday. But Monday, I'm assuming guys aren't in the best position to be under a ton of stress, right? Our heart rates are our highest in our Monday practice of the week. A little fogginess maybe left over from the weekend. So Mondays maybe centered more on how we can potentiate and sequence to the next day. So Monday, again, maybe more aerobic, sled, med ball, if they're in a better position, and maybe more neural, but we don't necessarily get the tissue stress. So, isometric methods, isokinetic training on the 1080, enough of a stressor to get the engine running, but not looking to blow them up. And then Tuesday, again, talking about load management, keeping our high days high, that's going to be our biggest day on the ice. So that for me makes sense to be our biggest day in the gym. So if there's stress and soreness and things, that's coming from me on Tuesday. I'm not as concerned about hurting them on Tuesday as I might be on Monday. And to backtrack, that's actually our day we do on ice training before our practice as well as a part of that skill session. So we'll do a couple of reps, loaded, unloaded contrast on the ice for speed. And then they're up in the gym with me after. And depending on what guys need, it may be a day on the flywheel, it may be a day, just traditional lifting, more dynamic effort. Again, higher force, lower force based on what guys need. And then after those 2 days, I don't think they're in a great spot for much more. So Wednesday, get a good practice, recovery. It's more parasympathetic. It's more, tissue quality, self-care. I'm big into the somatherapy, Aldoa, myofascial stretching, those kind of methods I think fit well there. And then Thursday, we get the engine running again. We don't want to go into the game, fresh. We want to go in sharp. So Thursday, I get the guys before practice. We jump, we sprint, we throw. It might look a little crazy from the outside, but our guys are used to it. And knock on wood, I haven't gotten any complaints yet. So I call that more like our dynamic day. So we bring that into our practice, which is, again, a higher intensity practice above the intensity of a game, right? We don't want to go up to the game. If anything, the game's a step back from the way we prepare. So Thursday, we're in doing that. And then Friday, Saturday at home on the road, we don't morning skate. So Friday, how do I prepare guys for the stressor that's coming at night? So we do a little something in the gym Friday morning. It may be med ball, it may be a low impact neural charge, something to flip the lights on that morning so we're not alarmed come that first shift. And then Friday being, again, a higher heart rate game than Saturday. They're actually better equipped from a physiology standpoint Saturday after they go through war Friday night, whereas Friday's a jump, a stressor, a sympathetic dump. So Saturday, then we recover in the morning. It's in the pool. It's a stretch. It's more passive methods, if you will. And then Saturday, just try to warm up as quick as possible. They're already ready to go. They play the night before and get to the good part. So that's kind of the length of the week. Again, it depends a little bit, but we're lucky to have travel in the Big Ten's pretty nice. We're flying an hour. We're busing 4. So we'll go sometimes on Thursdays and that work gets done on the road. But for the most part, we've got that week to train.
That's awesome. And that's super in depth. It reminds me of a couple of things. I'm piggybacking, just talking off the cuff. I always we have our model gain, go, grow. And in the in season, we take the grow away. It's gain and grow. So kind of lifting heavy things slow and then lifting moderate weight really fast. It's kind of our in season model. We only have 2 touch points with our kids. It reminds me a little bit of your high-low model in that Tuesday, Thursday, where that Thursday is more of a high CNS day, speed, dynamic. And then that Tuesday may or may not be, a little heavier loading stuff. But what I like really about that microcycle, I always say common practice doesn't mean best practice. I remember when I was playing college hockey, this is a long time ago, right? Our workouts were twice a week, Monday and Wednesday. And the reality is, we always think, and I'm pointing a thumb to myself, we always think neuromuscular system. But the reality is when you shut down, it's like pulling the emergency brakes on a car in the highway because so many other systems are interrelated. Lymphatic system, cardiovascular system, neuromuscular system, all of those systems where you're able to get the extra work and help the guys expedite recovery on a Monday, on a Wednesday. I think that's genius in how you set that microcycle up. Is that the realm of thinking as well in terms of that stress application?
I don't really see a space to block your training in season. We play every Friday.
Yep.
Some guys need a lot of strength. Why would I not train it for a month? Everybody needs speed. Why would I not train it for a month? So to undulate the week like that, a little bit like your model, right? Gain, go. And Dan Paff's 3-day rollover too, I think has influenced some of my thinking with that. And Yeah, I mean, our schedule is almost too good to be true that allows for that level of stability, you know?
That's great. Outstanding. All right. I know you talked about, I've looked and seen you, and you've had a talk recently on 1080. You do measure external load, flywheel, VBT. It looks as though all bells and whistles are covered at Michigan State University. Another thing that caught my eye, Will, I wanted to give you a huge compliment on. I was listening to one of your interviews, and you said in your interview, and I'm paraphrasing, you know what? That's all awesome. It's beautiful, and we're very lucky. But our goal, if we had none of that, I still want to be able to train the guys and get those results, right? Which I think is outstanding. You do have that though, right? You do have a lot of that.
Yeah.
So talk to the listener. When and how do you fit that into your weekly schedule? The technology, and maybe you want to talk about the 1080. Maybe you want to talk about whether it's velocity-based training or flywheel training. Where do you see those on those days? And maybe it is or isn't being used, but if you do use it, how?
I think when you get something like that, and I'm still so young, right? Like I get those things and you get excited, and initially it almost becomes a little bit of a 1080 program or a
Yep.
flywheel program. And I've made that mistake, like I'm sure others have. And I think I've almost taken a step back with those things and just really tried to remind myself it's just exercise at the end of the day. It allows you to access things that maybe other, traditional weightlifting doesn't, but it's understanding the stress and the adaptation, and then you can apply those things, not the other way around. So the 1080, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I've got a great relationship with those guys. And the things you can do, the isokinetic training is you can access forces in a way that are just so safe and really do. And I can't believe we just don't get sore really from it, and it's
That's
the
awesome.
feedback, the force output. It's as if you had a barbell, and every rep you had the opportunity to add 2-3 pounds if you wanted to, or if you couldn't, you could take weight away, rep to rep, set to set, just based on your own force output. So the isokinetic training is huge. And I've seen that pair really well with guys who need more force production, but guys who need, especially on the force plate, more propulsive qualities, right? You're
Yep.
driving as hard as you can into an organized, stable, safe resistance at slower speeds. And again, you get the feedback from the machine. So from it, we've got a bunch of alphas on our team. So from an intent standpoint, these guys are getting after it, which is my
Yep.
favorite part.
Yep.
There's no putting more weight on the bar, getting on guys when they're seeing what they're getting truly every rep. So the 1080, the quantums have been unbelievable in that regard. And it's all loading with the belt or a harness. I can't remember the last time I've put a bar on somebody's back for anything other than maybe 50% or less. So we're super lucky to be able to load that way. For our goalies, it's huge. And then the flywheel is a little bit of the opposite. And there's obviously more you can do with the 1080, but I
Yep.
think that's probably the big part, right? And the flywheel, it's almost, I describe it's like intermuscular coordination on steroids. It's the most athletic form of lifting that I've ever seen, and guys get massive results from it with breaking RFD, with breaking impulse, with stiffness, and these guys who really need to be able to work at higher or lesser forces, but at high speeds. I'm not worried about slowing guys down. I think if you do tempo or traditional training with a higher level athlete who's already quite strong, you could have maybe an adverse effect. Whereas this stuff, higher force or not, it's all fast, right? And it's also like accommodating resistance on steroids because you're pushing through the inertia of the flywheel the entire way up, and then dealing with that on the way down. So the flywheel is an unbelievable tool. We have exerflies. I'm sure you can't go wrong with other ones, but we've loved those, and we'll do different things on there. But those two are huge, and then the 1080 sprints. I mean, we've used timing gates before, and obviously you get good feedback, but to be specific and profile and actually take a look under the hood, similar to how you would on a force plate with the 1080s and these new ones they got now, the sprint twos, it's hard to believe these things exist. I mean, you can do isokinetic training on them. You can do your resisted runs and any and everything in between. So on and off the ice, those are a huge tool for us. Loaded, unloaded runs. Again, feedback, not just for speed, but for speed at certain times, steps, force, power, things like that.
Excellent. And I'm going to repeat, I'm asking a question, but I know you've answered it. We talked about this idea. I stole it many years ago from Patrick Ward. Adaptation method means. I always want to think, what's my adaptation first? What the method can I use to get that adaptation? And then the actual exercise itself. Retaining and developing qualities. I'm putting words in your mouth. You talked about power output. Are there any methods? Now we're talking not the technology. Are there any methods? I know you talked about potentiation in season or during the developmental times that you like to amplify certain adaptations for your athletes. So I'll give you an example. You talked about power output. Are there any methods that you like to amplify that? Speed, is it just something, maybe it's a French contrast, or maybe it's hooking the guys up to the 1080? Are there any methods that you like to attack those qualities that you found really work well for your guys?
Yeah, I mean, to start simple, I think loaded sprinting is a game changer. The
Yep.
ground contact times, the joint angles, the similarity between those, the early stages of skating. I think, if you're not doing that, you're probably missing something. I think that's a huge piece. And I played around with force velocity profiling, and we still use it to some extent. Guys do lighter loads at higher speeds, heavier loads at slower speeds, but I've collected enough data to be pretty confident that the heavy stuff works for everybody. I just think there's so much value in heavy resisted sprinting within reason, as it's safe and you have prerequisites of
Yep.
stiffness and whatever else. I do think there's a ton of value in that.
Yep.
Again, the goal of strength is to apply it quickly, right? Is to transfer it to speed. So I like different complexes, whether it be isokinetic, overcoming isos. I actually got the idea from Ben Prentice, who is
Yep.
overwhelmingly smart, and I've been lucky to talk to, is pairing that with the flywheel, and then with a more ballistic movement after. So it's heavy, slow force. It's a faster force on the flywheel, and then just the eye test of the way guys move after doing that's pretty impressive. So I think some of those complexes and things that don't just apply to jumps, but sprints, more lateral based movements, I think those have been huge for us. Instead of just your traditional lift heavy and then jump, I think maybe having a little bit more purpose for some of those things. And we do test it, right? We'll put a force plate at the end of those complexes and actually assess, is there a potentiation happening? And there's a couple I found that seem to work quite well.
Outstanding. Slight pivot. I started putting this in the question list here. I try to have different questions for each and every guest, but the last two podcast episodes, I've asked the same question. I think it's an interesting question. Tried and true elements in your program that haven't changed much in the past several years. Hey, Anthony, these are some elements that are just tried, tested, and true that haven't changed much. And then conversely, based on some new research, new findings, new material that you've procured, here are some things that have changed.
Yeah, I think the concurrent approach and the undulation of the week is I don't see that ever changing for me.
Yep.
I blocked it off before, and you get a really big decline, and then sometimes you get a really big rebound, but it's not linear. But I'd rather see things kind of fluctuate and hopefully trend in a little bit cleaner path, especially in season. So I think the manipulation of the week with a wide variety of stimulus, some guys more concentrate on the force side, some guys on the velocity side. I think it makes it easier to individualize programming. It's not, okay, there's 3 different workouts going on. Today we're doing the trap bar. Some guys are at 0.6, some guys are at 0.9, some guys are jumping at 1.3, and I think the structure of the week allows you to give guys what they need. Everybody gets everything. Some guys just get more certain things, so I think the like a polarized loading approach, kind of moving across the force velocity curve, makes a ton of sense to me. So I don't really see that changing, especially in season. As far as, things that I think I've changed on, I think, I've learned, more through conversations with other people. And I really do think the on ice training piece is borderline a necessity to actually affect change in hockey players. I do think not just testing speed on the ice, but actually training it. On our speed days in the gym, we do speed on the ice, and I think that's a huge part of it, because you don't really know if what you're doing is working until you actually see if it's working in context. And I think we can assume transference, but if you don't see it and you don't actually assess it, I think it's just an assumption, so I've been challenged as of late to actually look beyond what I'm doing in the gym and make sense of if that's working on the ice. And I owe that again to Ben, and Matt Price has been a great mentor and helped me with that. And, kind of just getting started in that piece. But the on ice training piece is definitely something I'll continue to build on going forward.
I like it. Final pivot here. Where is right now the pendulum currently swinging high performance? What are we doing well? And then what can we improve on? And this, again, obviously based on your experience, based on the colleagues that you're around, whether it's social media that you read, whatever it may be. What are we doing really well? And what do you think we as a group of practitioners need to improve upon, or what can get better?
Things we're doing well. I think we're stepping outside of just the gym and traditional lifting, and really starting to look more at movement and biomechanics. And, I think and I don't do this near enough, but I think video analysis has been something that's been cool to see get incorporated more into training. Motion IQ and what they do at Altus with sprinting is phenomenal. And I think to see that start to make its way into hockey with kinegram analysis or video, I think is huge. Looking at stride length, stride frequency, is there, these landmark positions, and can you achieve those? Because through skating, I don't think just skating more necessarily solves that problem. I think those are things, capacities, hopefully in the gym, that we can change. And to shine a light on those things with video, I think is the first step towards actually making a difference there.
Excellent. What can we improve upon? Anything that you recommend? Anything that you've seen? Are we where we need to be?
I don't know if I've been doing this long enough to have very much of an opinion there, but I think one thing I've challenged myself on, and again, I owe this to conversations with other people, is are we really going after what matters? And I think that's a great question. And it's not lifting, it's not the force plate, it may not even be sprinting. I think it's working backwards from the ice and making sure we're targeting. And that's the other thing too, is I say I'm testing on the ice and we're doing a goal the blue line and I'm making a difference, but that's as reduced as the ice gets. Is that actually helping them in the game? And in confidence, I can say that I don't know. Is a straight line 20-yard sprint game speed, right? Or is it crossovers? Is it and alternating between the two? So I think that's probably the next layer is, are we actually changing the things we think we're changing on the ice? And
what a great,
hopefully I'll figure that
well
out.
Beyond your years, young man. I think that's an excellent response. It reminds me of a conversation. I had the opportunity to interview probably my big mentors in the field, which are Buddy Morris, Dan Paff, Fergus Connolly, and Buddy Morris. Let's say all those. Yeah. My Michael Boyle, sorry. And I asked him a question. I said, what's one word or a few words that would make you throw the phone across the room, if you said them? And I think Buddy Morris said something like muscle memory. Dan Paff, transfer, he said. Fergus Connolly, prediction. And oh my gosh, the longer I've been in this game, the more I'm uncomfortable answering any of those questions. Like you just don't know, right? Like not many of us carry out randomized controlled experiments. We focus on building a program we think is going to work to build X, Y, Z. And the reality is we're focusing on those things and you can't tease one out of the other. And it's very complex, what we do. But nonetheless, where can our listeners, Will, learn more about you?
I'm not a big social media guy. You're probably just going to see, my wife and I just had a baby girl, so maybe she'll make an appearance on there, but not much going on there training wise. So email is probably the best way. morlockw@msu.edu, or if you got anybody who reaches out to you and you want to give them my number or whatever, I'm happy to chat. And I guess last thing I want to say too is like, I'm able to do all this stuff, and I'm really lucky. I do have grad assistants and interns, and I'm a one man strength coach here, but I've got them to help, and I've got a really good group of younger coaches through my network at GBN and people there who've impacted me and helped me get where I am, and can kind of bounce ideas off of. So I think there's the big dogs I've learned from for sure is Ben and Matt, some of those other guys, but I'm super lucky to have a group of younger strength coaches that I can refer to and people here to help me look at all these numbers, so I'm not spending all day plugging all this crap into a computer myself.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate your time. Our guest today in the podcast has been Will Morlock. Will, thanks so much for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.